Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock Blog, and I'm here with Kenny, and we are going to be talking about Return of Condor Heroes, chapters 21 through 25. And so I just want to make a note today that Kenny's a little under the weather, and so hopefully we'll be able to get through this. But it may be we may both be a little bit off today, so we apologize, but we want to kind of get through these chapters and talk about them. So we're just going to press on ahead. And anyways, so in these chapters, a lot happens. But why don't we? I guess why don't we start with chapter 21, Kenny, where the title of the chapter is "Fierce Fighting at Zhangyang," and this is the one where Guo Jing and Yang Guo are gonna sleep in the bedchamber together, and Yang Guo is still sort of determined to kill Guo Jing, and he actually acts on that decision to a degree, but there's confusion, and he's stopped, and Guo Jing mistakes his behavior for his internal energy being disrupted, and Yang Guo kind of goes along with it, and oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the important thing to mention here is that Yang Guo actually so at the end of sort of at chapter 20-ish, Guo Jing sort of leaves to have a conversation with Huang Rong. And Huang Rong already suspects that Yang Guo is up to no good, and they have a conversation about Yang Guo's father, which Yang Guo overhears. And from his point of view, it's tantamount to a confession to being the cause of his father's death, basically, which is what sort of steals his determination to kill Guo Jing. And then we've got the whole scene where Yang Guo is pretending to have cultivation deviation, and Guo Jing is trying to help him. And then throughout the rest of the sort of chapter, and even the next chapter, Guo Jing thinks that Yang Guo is like injured and incapable of exerting his full powers.
And over the course, and that becomes important in this chapter because right after that incident, there's a scene where the Wu brothers are both sort of trying to impress Guo Fu, and she's kind of leading them both on, and they decide to go after Kublai Khan and assassinate him, and unsurprisingly, they end up getting captured, and Guo Jing receives a message that the Wu brothers are at Kublai's camp, and an invitation for him to arrive. And it's phrased very politely, but it's very clear that this is essentially he's using them as hostages. And Yang Guo decides to go with Guo Jing, and at this point, though, he's still planning on killing Guo Jing, though he's sort of struggling with the idea as he learns more and as he sees evidence of Guo Jing's patriotism. And when they go to the Mongol camp, and there's they get the Wu brothers, send them back, and there's a big battle. I'm glossing over a lot, but we'll get into it in a moment. And Guo Jing is injured and poisoned by Nimo Jing's iron snake, and that's when Yang Guo decides to rescue him. And it's sort of the moment in the chapter where Yang Guo makes the crucial decision, I think, to that Guo Jing is a patriot, that and he starts to redirect his energies away from this idea of revenge. So I don't know. Would you say that's an accurate overview of the chapter? And
Yeah, I think So the key thing is that I think it's important for Yang Guo's character here that he makes a choice to not kill Guo Jing, despite still thinking that he was his father's murderer. He has a bit of doubts as to whether his father was actually the good man he thought he was, which is completely unfounded, by the way. Like, he has no reason to believe that his father was a good person.
Well, I think that's the natural thing, is just to sort of assume he must have been this great man. But also maybe the mother's silence helped encourage that, because didn't he mention that she didn't really say a lot about the father, or am I mistaken?
No, she definitely didn't say much about him.
Yeah. So maybe he just filled in that silence with his own ideas. But yeah, I would agree with you. There's no reason for him to think it. But definitely this is where he starts to say, oh, gee, maybe my father wasn't this great guy. and he's starting to get a clearer sense, perhaps, of what actually happened.
Yeah, and despite ignoring all of that, like he basically lets go of his desire for vengeance at that moment for the people of Song. Basically, it is what for the sake of fighting the Mongolians. He's seen the sort of the carnage that they've brought. There was like one scene described early in the book with the baby on the end of a spear that was being like paraded around on the road. Earlier on this chapter as well, they were actually mentioning all the different refugees and how the Mongolians were trying to use apparently a standard tactic of like forcing refugees towards the city, and then when the city receives the refugees, they would ride in through the refugees and infiltrate the city that way. I say infiltrate, but charge through and break through by using people as a shield, basically.
And I think the what was it? The one of the interesting things about the battles in I think especially these chapters where you get to see Guo Jing fighting is he's using these techniques that are taking out like 8 to 10 men at a time, and you get a real sense of just how immense his power is. And it's something that it's sort of one of those things that really sort of sets wuxia apart from other genres. Is sort of this, you reach this level of heroic ability where you're almost like a tank on the battlefield. Like the martial heroes in this setting, when they get really great, one martial hero is equal to a number of other men. It's
There is a saying for that. It's a bit exaggerated, but it's like one hero worth 1,000 is like a very succinct like Chinese idiom to describe someone who's worth. It's probably not quite one against a Val 1,000 type, but his value is at that sort of level. Like, he can take out groups of people. He has command. He has charisma. He has his worth. I think that it puts him above the value of 100 common troops.
And and I think it also kind of gives it like a little bit of like a mythic feel. Like it's sort of like something about when you have these heroes that are just they can sort of stand in the midst of a great battle, and they're just not as affected by the minutia as everybody else. They're able to withstand the minor cuts and scrapes to a degree that the others can't.
I think like sort of like a Western example of this would be like the Knights of King Arthur. Like, they are all sort of mythical level of heroic people, and they're involved in wars and stuff all the time, but they're always the type who can fight against the army. That their presence can turn the tide of a battle. They can shrug off like minor injuries, like then like nothing.
Yeah, I would say that's a good one. I'd say like Achilles and things like that. Like, it's that sort of level of it's not it's definitely operating with some different ground rules than like a more grounded genre. But the next chapter is the baby girl in the city in danger, and in this chapter, Guo Jing and Yang Guo go back to the city because Guo Jing's poisoned. He needs to recover, and that night, Jin Lun's apprentice Huodu arrives and brings a message basically saying Jin Lun is coming in the morning. Again, very politely phrased, but the intentions are pretty clear. And there's an amusing little incident that occurs where Huang Rong spills some tea on him and convinces him that he's been poisoned by this horrible, I think it's like a bone-melting poison, she says. Something that sounds really awful. And once again, the Wu brothers decide to fight with each other outside the city. They sort of have there can be only one situation going on with Guo Fu, and this infuriates Huang Rong. And the next morning, she goes into labor as Jin Lun is arriving, and he burns down the place to get her and Guo Jing to come out, and Yang Guo kind of distracts him, and this leads to an extended sort of chase fight sequence involving not just Jin Lun and Yang Guo, but Li Mochu, who arrives, and because Wang Rong's baby has been born, and she ends up trying to snatch it from Yanguo, thinking that it is oh no, Xiaolong Nu, right? Xiaolong Nu.
Xiao Liu, yeah,
Yeah.
because Xiao Liu was carrying the baby, and so Xiao Liu and Yang Guo were fighting Jinlun while Xiao Liu was carrying the baby, um, and she was trying to hand the baby over to Yang Guo. I remember that part.
Okay.
And Jinlun was just giving no craps about the baby being there, and was just like launching all these attacks regardless of the baby's presence.
So at one point, didn't he save the baby? I mean, I think it was for a tactical reason. I don't think it was out of the goodness of his heart.
Well, I think it's one of those sort of. In my mental image, is the baby's up in the air somewhere, and Jinden snatches it out. I think at that point he decides it's a good idea to have like some leverage. And I think he knows that it's Guo Jing's baby, unlike Nemo Cho, who assumes that it's Xiaolong Nu's baby because she already thinks that Xiaolong Nu and Yang Guo have done the deed, as it were.
Well, she has so she knows that the virginity dot is now missing, right? Because she mentions that, and she sees Xiaolong Nu with a baby, so I guess it's a fairly safe assumption, but she sort of just leaps to it, and she really, I just find it so amusing. You have this woman who's going around murdering people like that, but she's so upset that Xiaolong Nu and Yango might have had sex. That she's I don't know, just that she's so judgmental is amusing to me.
Well, her ultimate goal is to get the manual for the Jade Maiden sword play, which is what she's thinking, that she could take Yang Guo and Xiaolong's baby in air quotes there in exchange for the manual, which sort of makes sense as a scheme. But yeah, you're right in that she's very judgmental. So one little inconsistency that we sort of have is I thought that Nemo Cho's chastity was sort of taken from her by the was it Lu, by one of the Lu, can't remember his name, one of the older brother of the Lu people at the beginning.
I'm not 100% clear on that. I want to go back and look at that chapter again. I've kind of I'm a little bit hazy, but I know that we had mentioned that in passing. I think we both kind of assumed it.
Yeah. But she still has her virginity dot, right?
Yeah, and she said she's a virgin, I think. So we just might have, one of the things that I find sometimes happens too with this series is there's so many different versions of it on TV and movies and stuff. Sometimes you pick up things that you saw on a show, even if you've just read the book. Do you know what I mean? So I think we should go back though and make a point of really figuring that one out. There's also 3 editions of the book, and it's possible that there's some confusion resulting from that. But actually, now that I think about it, I don't think it actually specifically said that. I think we just kind of leapt to that conclusion.
I guess because it's sort of the only reason we can think of for Limocho being so outraged at the Lu person, Scholar Lu or whatever it was because he took her chastity and then dumped her basically to marry someone else. But I guess that's just us projecting in that sense, and that we sort of imagine that in a modern society that would be a situation where you'd sort of start killing him and his family. Yeah. Maybe in a wuxia setting, it is enough to sort of lead her on a bit and whisper sweet nothings at her, and then one day just dump her and go marry someone else. That's enough to because he did persuade her basically to abandon the sect, right? Or no, she abandoned the sect first, I think.
Well, and his name is Lu Zhanyuan is the name of the but you know what we'll do? You know what I think we should do? We should do a special Limocho chapter. Not chapter, but podcast at some point where we sort of clarify all these things about her. Because I think that's a whole thing that we could get into separately. Because there's a lot of details about her that are easy for us to gloss over in the course of this. But the key thing that happens is there's this 3-way chase between her, Yanguo, and Jinlun, and they're effectively fighting over this baby, and then they end up at a cave, and Yanguo and Li Mochu are stuck inside as Jinlun is outside with Nimo Xing, and they use some poison needles in the entryway to to make their escape, and both Jin Lun and Nemo Jing are poisoned. Nemo Jing ends up cutting off his own legs for the to get rid of the venom, and Li Mo Chu and Yang Guo go in search of milk for the baby, which is probably one of the funnier scenes in the book.
It was quite funny.
Yeah.
Also quite morbid because of the scene where Nemo Cho was trying to he kills the baby of the villager. So she goes into a village, finds a woman who's recently given birth, and basically dashes her baby against the wall, and then says, "Now feed this baby."
Yeah. Well, and then she kills the mother too. I think she kills them both when they're trying to flee, right? Like the mother grabs the baby and runs away, and she palms them or something.
Yeah.
And that scene's striking because at this point you sort of get the sense that Li Mochu might be softening in the presence of this baby. Do you know what I mean? Like she seems to be, and she's at least softening up to Yango a little bit, like even if it's only because of they're forced by circumstance to work together. You just get the sense that like, you know, she's not all bad, but then she just right away he just starts
kills the baby and then kills the mother afterwards.
and then not only that, but she's just like she's just kind of recklessly roaming around, she's burning houses, and she's almost like a child throwing a tantrum. Do you know what I mean?
Everyone in the wuxia world tends to be very childish, as it were. Like Yang Guo. Okay, so Yang Guo has the excuse of being young, but like I don't know. They all have their shortcomings, I feel, and Nemo shovels are very obvious because it involves killing lots of innocent people.
And I mean, well, I guess maybe it's just, again, it's sort of the product of being these powerful people in this setting. You can sort of throw tantrums and nobody's gonna really, you know, I mean, there's nobody's been able to stop Li Mochu when she does this. So she did just like.
Well, actually, I'm just thinking. So in this sort of setting, people spend a lot of their time practicing their martial arts and training, right? Uh-huh. They don't have as much time interacting with people, so that's why their EQ is so low. It's because they don't have this chance to sort of build up experience and interacting with people, and this is why they fall in love at first sight and get into squabbles over the tiniest things that can last generations down the line.
That's not a bad theory. Yeah. And so then the next chapter is a very important one. I haven't forgotten anything in the last one, have I? I know that we're.
I think. Yeah, that's it. That's. Oh, at some point, the baby is fed some leopard milk. I don't know how the biology of this goes, but something tells me that won't work out. It doesn't really. I don't know. The baby. I don't think baby should be drinking milk from other species.
Oh yeah, no, that's the baby is fed leopard milk, and also this is also the chapter where he sees the eagle for the first time, right?
That's the next chapter, I think.
Is it?
So this 23. So after Yang Guo and Nemo Cho escape.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a chapter, didn't I? That was the problem. I skipped a chapter. So the next chapter is 23, and then that's the chapter where the so we've had the scene that you were talking about with the feeding the baby the leopard milk, and then Yango has this encounter with a giant eagle, and you know it has these fights with these 4 venomous snakes, and then. You know, Yango steps in to help at a certain point when this giant venomous snake shows up, and he flies with it to a valley, and they go into a cave, and there they find the grave of demonic swordsman Dugu, and Yango feels this close friendship with this eagle, like a friendship like he hasn't felt, it seems, with anybody else really, or at least not with many people. And then he returns to Li Mochu, and he has an encounter with Wu Santong and the Wu brothers. And the Wu brothers are still sort of fighting over Guofu, and this is upsetting Wu Santong. And so Yang Guo decides that he's going to help Wu Santong with his sons, and pretends that he's interested in marrying Guofu, and this marriage has already kind of been arranged anyway, so it's a totally plausible lie. and he gets in a fight with the Wu brothers. Zhao Longnu overhears him going on about how he's going to marry Guofu, and this sort of plants the seed of their next separation. But Yanguo sort of handily defeats them, and then there's a fight with Li Mochu, who's in the background, and I think the Wu brothers are poisoned, and Yanguo sucks out the venom, and he collapses and he wakes up in bed and finds out that Zhao Longnu is left, and then that gets into the next chapter. I don't know if I left anything out there.
No, I think that's basically everything.
Okay, and so this chapter, I don't know. This was this is one where. Oh, go ahead.
I was just to say, like, so one of the it just bugs me a little bit that by this point, Xiaolong Lu doesn't seem to understand that Yang Guo lies to people to do things. Like he obviously never lies to her, but for some reason that also seems to make her think that he doesn't lie to anybody else.
Well, here's the thing though. She barely even knows what a lie is at this point. She's incredibly naive, and she's lived in that cave. I mean, I think it strains plausibility a bit, but I think the idea is like she just because she like at one point. They earlier in these chapters, Huang Rong asks her to protect Guo Jing while he's sleeping, and she says, "No, I only protect Yanguo." It's like she's just like she's got like a very sort of oddly shaped mind when it comes to things, and so I don't know, but yeah, I think so. Do you think it's a plausibility issue, or is it just a thing where it annoys you about her character?
It annoys me that by this point she's not really, learnt that Yang. I mean, she's seen that the way Yang Guo fights is through clever tricks and like taunting his opponents with words. Like he's done this time and time again. Like at the Heroes Feast and then at the Passionless Valley. Like his words are as much of a weapon as his actual martial art sometimes. And I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's like, well, fool me once. Shame on me, kind of thing. But,
okay.
By this point, I really feel like she should. Oh, that doesn't sound right. He's never mentioned any of that to me. Maybe I should talk to him about it instead of running away. But
okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I find that scene just annoying for the fact that you know that they're going to have another one of these separations, and it's kind of a silly thing for them to be.
And this is one of the most tragic separations as well because of what happens in the next chapter. Yeah. So it's just like
so yeah, it definitely but also it is an important chapter because it's one where you're starting to see Yanguo just increasingly become much less selfish over the and sort of modeling himself more after somebody like Guo Jing, where he's like, okay, I'm going to do this for Wu Santong. And well,
I think the reason he did that was because he thought that he was dying, and he is dying from the poison. There's like, oh well, I can do a good deed for Wu Santong type of thing.
No, sure, but another way to look at it is he's only got like 7 days to live at this point, according to what he's been told. And would you want to spend like he could still make use of that time, but so. Like I would almost think you might become more selfish if you've only got 7 days to live because you wanna make good use. But the interesting thing is the poisons seem to sort of hold each other in check once he wakes up in the next chapter, and it's sort of like it's like the Mr. Burns thing. I don't know if you are familiar with the Mr. Burns situation on the Simpsons where the doctor said he had
heart attack thing.
No,
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, that's when he had every illness and they were sort of keeping everything in check. Basically.
Yeah, and that's kind of what seems to be going on with the passionless poison, and I think it was Li Mochu's poison needles.
Yeah, the soul freezing needles or whatever.
So, and it's funny too because it's sort of like there's this really weird parody between what's going on between Yanguo and Jinlun and Zhao Longnu and Jinlun, and you sort of have you have the situation where Yanguo has the two poisons that are held in check, are holding each other in check. And then you have the next situation with Zhu Betong when he gets poisoned with I forget, the Tibetan spider that poisons him, and then it's like the bee venom that sort of counteracts it. And they're
Yeah.
both sort of have that situation in a cave, and I don't know. But in the next chapter,
Oh, before we move on, I do want to mention that part of the sort of the the scene with the Wu brothers where he's fighting them is, and he makes them believe that he has sort of been betrothed to Guo Fu, is that he uses the Peach Island Masters Kung Fu, the finger flicking and the jade flute sword play, to sort of demonstrate that Huang Rong has personally taught me these techniques, because I'm going to be a successor type of thing, and I'm going to marry her daughter.
well, and he's not necessarily lying when he says some of that stuff. Like it's pretty clear Huang Rong holds him in high esteem at this point. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
her estimation of him has increased, by a large amount, while her opinion of the Wu brothers has declined sharply. And so Yang Gu is kind of basically saying something that's essentially true. And it is interesting that yet again in this story, you have something that was supposed to happen that didn't happen that ended up happening anyways, where, he ended up learning the technique that he was supposed to have learned from Huang Rong early.
Oh yeah.
And so,
One of those little ironies in there,
but then in the next chapter is crucial, and you get this really horrible cliffhanger. Guo Fu is furious with Yang Guo, because now the Wu brothers are no longer, they've lost, and so now she's got nobody. Now they're not trying to win her love anymore, and so she blames Yang Guo for all this, for the exchange he had with. Oh, go ahead.
It's just Guo Fu's character. Some introspection is required. I mean, just think about the common denominator. You're the issue. Like, why would you blame the Wu brothers and Yang Guo for everything when you're the one who can't, make a choice and stick to your guns? And you're so pampered and spoiled. And I think she improves towards the end of the book, and there's reconciliation and stuff there. But at this point, she's a very hateable character just because of the way she's acting.
Yeah. I mean, she's there's a what's the movie? One-Armed Swordsman is kind of based around this scene, and it's not really Guo Fu, and it's like they're not the actual characters, but the character that cuts off his arm in that movie is a pretty good summary of Guo Fu at this point. I think that sort of encapsulates her personality, and she I mean, there's an extended sequence that happens here, but the end result is it seems she cuts off Yang Guo's arm, and the reader is left to wonder.
Yeah, because it wasn't explicit. What the description basically just said, like, that she made a few moves and Yang Guo didn't really try to defend himself, and like he raised an arm to defend against like one blow from Guo Fu, and I think she used a bit too much force in it, and then it sort of cuts out there. So we don't know that the blow landed or that a wound was caused or anything. We just it literally just leaves us at that cliffhanger of the blow is in midair, and now we're left to.
But then we
move to a different part of the story,
and then we don't hear about Yang Guo for the next couple of chapters from here on. It's so this is giant cliffhanger, and then there's sort of this thing where they kind of go back to what happened with Zhao Longnu when she was at the Rock and she overheard everything, and then she gets back to the city, and she has and she ultimately overhears these the two Taoists talking, and she has a revelation that with this information that Zhao Zhiping raped her while she
Yin Ziping.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Zhao Zhiping is the senior.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So Yin Zhiping, basically says that he raped her, and she freezes up for a little while. Like she has to sort of process this information, and she essentially confirms it for Guafu, who then that's why she's able to go to Yanguo. And also I should say in that scene,
mention, yeah.
there's a really important.
Why
Okay, so yeah, in that scene when Guafu is having her fight with Yanguo, she says that Zhao Long Nu, has done this horrible deed, and I think she even says, like, she can do it, but I can't even bring myself to say it. That's how horrible this is, and Yanguo slaps her, and then that's what kind of leads into the sword fighting. And Yanguo, because he was so weak from the poison, wasn't really able to do much. But then we sort of have this flashback or not flashback, but it just kind of goes back to that point in the story to get Zhao Long Nu's perspective, and she she uncovers this information, and then she starts following the Taoists, and she's sort of like basically the feeling you get is that she's like hounding them to the ends of the earth as they're trying to get away from her. And
it's a sort of very creepy hounding, I'd say more like a haunting than anything else, because all she does is like follow her like 20 meters behind them, and no matter how fast they try to run away, and they turn around and she's still there.
Yeah, it's a very unusual sort of moment in the book, and they end up I think at a restaurant where Jinlun and his men eventually arrive, and Zhao Zhijing, who's always kind of schemy and generally sort of a bad guy, he ends up clinging to Jinlun, thinking he can use him as a shield against Zhao Long Nu, and so they end up going with him to Kublai's camp, and then at the camp, Zhu Batong arrives with the royal flag of the Mongols, and he and Jinlun sort of settle on a game where Zhu Batong's going to have to come back and find the flag, and then that'll prove who can outwit the other. And so, did I miss anything in that chapter?
No, I think that's the key parts. I think it's worth mentioning at this point that sort of Jinlun's got a handle on Zhou Botong's character as well now, knowing how to manipulate him. And this is part of why his schemes sort of work in the next chapter as well, because you see how shrewd Jinlun is and how his understanding of people and how they act is very important.
Yeah, he's very good. He's very good at sort of getting at manipulating people, and so in this scene, he ends up, not only does he manipulate Zhu Batong, he manipulates Zhao Zhijing and tells him that he basically says, "Look, I'm going to try to help you because I want you to be the leader of Xuanzhen sect, and it's important that you impress Zhu Batong. So I'm going to tell you where the flag is." And so then Zhao Zhijing is able to leave Zhu Batong to the flag, and then Zhu Batong, because he wants to win, he sort of turns it into a race, and he goes into a cave where the flag is, grabs it, and he's poisoned by these Tibetan snow spiders. I forget their exact name, but they're really sort of beautifully described. And then you have this protracted standoff in this cave where Zhu Batong has been poisoned, and Zhao Long Nu is in the cave with him, sort of fending off Jinlun's attacks from the from outside the cave, and then Jinlun brings more of these spiders to the battle and seals off the cave entrance with their webs. But it turns out that the cure for the venom and the sort of the anti-substance for the web is honey and bees. And so because Zhao Long Nu has the bee fragrance, the jade container that she carries, she's able to use that to her advantage, and Zhu Batong is cured when she lures enough bees to sting him, and then they're able to break through the web. And oh, go ahead.
I think one of the parts that amused me the most is when Jinlun uses Zhongbatong as a meat shield when Xiaolon's sort of throwing out these poison needles, and yeah, it's basically Zhongbatong gets like a whole bunch of needles in his back because it's been used as a shield, and he's like, oh, this is actually quite good. I can feel it helping, and like, and yeah, at that point you're thinking maybe that's just him being ridiculous, but we find out, yeah, not a couple of pages down the line that it actually is the JB venom, the bee venom is actually counteracting this spider venom somehow.
And yeah, and then the chapter ends with massive chaos of Chuan's insect, where Jiping is supposed to be the new leader of the sect, but Zhao Zhijing has been using his knowledge of what happened to sort of manipulate him and exploit him, and there's a series of complicated things that occur. But eventually, what happens is Zhijing gains control of the sect, and Jiping is about to be executed when Zhao Longnu arrives and says, "Let me do it." And there's also, massive battle involving Jinlun and the Mongolians, and these chapters are pretty. There's a lot of sort of battle details, and yeah. So I don't know. What did you think of this chapter?
Yeah, it was chaotic, and it sort of, for me, it highlights just how easy it is to manipulate people. It seems to be. I mean, if I remember correctly, so the only reason Zhao Jijing knows of the affair between Yin Ziping and Shalom Liu was because Yin Ziping felt so guilty about it that he confessed to Zhao Jijing what happened. Right? I think that's sort of the course of events.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Yeah, just as a result of that, all of this chaos is going down. He's being forced to abdicate a sect leader position, and yeah, throughout the whole thing, he's always like mentioned that I've committed the great sin. Like he's aware that what he's done is wrong, and he wants to atone for it now. But he just doesn't seem to know how to, and I don't know why he thinks that handing his position over to Zhao Jijing is going to help. I mean, I think what he said was that he needs to preserve the face of the Transcendent sect, because if word got out that one of the sect leader had assaulted a woman, that would be pretty scandalous, and that would ruin their reputation.
Well, I mean, I think what he said was he would be executed for what he did. I think that's the penalty that sect has for the crime that he committed, and.
But the thing is, he was perfectly willing to let Xiao Lu kill him. Like, I think he's mentioned a few times that like if Xiao Lu wanted to kill him, then he would be happy to go along with it.
Well,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's just because he's so in love with Xiao Lu that he thinks anything that she does is.
I think. Well, there's a lot of people that are not fully committed to the idea of suicide in these books, even though they say they are, and I feel like he's one of them. Like I don't know. I think when he's despondent, okay, I might as well just kill myself. But then as soon as Zhao Zhijing gives him a glimmer of hope, he's just right back in the palm of his hand, and again, I think it says a lot about. I mean, it says a lot about Zhen Jiping when you think of what a terrible character Zhao Zhijing is. Do you know what I mean? And how easily he's been sort of like, why is he so close to this man who's so despicable at every turn in the book? And so I think in addition to a number of his other failings, that one of the chief ones that Xi Ping has is a very weak will, and
that probably explains why he did perform the rape in the first place. It's because he could control himself.
Yeah, so I think he's not only like weak, in terms of his will with himself, but his will with other people, and so I don't know. I just find him I mean, he sort of has these glimmering moments where like it's like he seems like he's kind of redeemed, but you can't redeem. Number one, you can't redeem him in light of what he's done to Xiaolong Nu. But number two, he's just too he's going along with Xi Jing's program the whole time, and Xi Jing is such a like I mean he's practically twirling his mustache. He's so
He's so
villainous.
evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's sort of like one of those uncharismatic villains, like the villain who's like, he's got everything except for being handsome and suave, but he's got all the other villain elements going for him.
Yeah.
And he's just so slimy, the way he, uses precise wordings, all the time to get out of, he'll make promises, but he'll be very careful how he phrases them. And then he just, unravels the promise by sticking to the precise meaning of the words. And yeah, so I don't know. So, but yeah, that's where we are now. We're in the end of chapter 25.
And that's the point. I don't know why he thinks he is more capable to be, why he thinks he's capable of being the sect leader of Transcend Sect. Like, I feel like he's one of those people who wants power, but I think once he gets it, he won't know what to do with it, and that would, his type of character is sort of my least favorite in the sort of the villainous archetype, in that you can tell from no matter how you he is not going to be an efficient leader. People won't follow him. The sector's going to go downhill. He's going to fall to the Mongolians. You can see the downfall of Transcend Sect at this moment in time. Like it's very obvious that as long as Zhao Jijing takes over, everything's gonna get ruined. Yeah. But he still thinks that he is. Oh, I deserve to be the sect leader because. I don't even think I don't think he himself believes he deserves it. To be fair, he just thinks he wants it, just because it was actually mentioned here that there was like hundreds of different branches of the Transcend Sect and hundreds of thousands of disciples, and which is actually quite significant. I don't know if that's.
So you're questioning his administrative skills when he gets into the post?
Anything. Like I don't think he'd be able to accomplish anything. Like he would just ruin it, and then he'd be left with
he couldn't handle like an 11-year-old disciple. Imagine how he would manage the whole sect. So yeah, I think you're right. It's and also he's just one of these characters. He does not generate any kind of positive response from people. All of his qualities are in the negative, and he just has no integrity,
his kung fu is weak. Yeah. He has no charisma. He has no determination, as far as we can see. I mean,
you know what he is? He's like a rat, though. He's somebody who seems good at surviving. Yeah. And in moments of desperations can sort of find the way out. So I see him as one of these people that might, if he does gain power, he's not likely to hold it for very long, but he stands a good chance of surviving and finding a way to sort of, eke out an existence after he falls from power.
I don't know. Like he doesn't strike me as the person who will survive and try to eke out an existence, because he has ambitions, but I don't think he has the means to fulfill those ambitions, nor the ability to hold the reins on those ambitions.
I think he overestimates his own abilities, but I think what he has is he has a very strong will to survive, and a very strong sense of I'm more important than everybody else in the world, and so I think between that and some basic scheming ability, with the promise thing, he's very good at that. He's very good at saying, "Oh, so you want me to promise this? Sure, yeah," and then he makes sure it's phrased right, and then what? I did exactly what you said. I did exactly what we agreed to. This is exactly what we agreed upon. I forget the exact wording, but in both instances it was
I think the one was with when they found Xiaolong and Yang Guo practicing naked in the flower field. It was like, I promise I won't tell a fifth person. A fifth person will never find out about what happened here. And then at the hero's feast, he just proclaims it because, well, there are so many people here. There is no fifth person.
So he's got something. But it's it's more the kind of scheming you expect to encounter like among a lower sort of rank criminal
Yeah.
than the leader of a sect. I certainly can't imagine people feeling good about themselves following him. Even bad guys wouldn't feel good about following this man. He's so, like Jin Lun, you can see why he might attract the following, but this guy, no. There's not that
Yeah.
much redeeming about him.
I don't know. It's just like Jin Lun. I feel is a much better sort of villain as far as it goes. I mean, he has the power, he has the smarts, and he can draw people in. Like even Yang Guo was, sort of thinking, oh, it's not too bad when they were sort of traveling together. Yeah, and then he showed his shitty side again. But that's Jin Lun for you, I guess.
And yeah, no, I would agree. I think he's. I mean, he's obviously sort of like the big villain in this one. But I guess yeah, I don't know. I mean, Jin Lun and Li Mochu to me are they're the sort of powerhouse villains in this story. But I think you kind of need those.
I think the powerhouse enemies in this novel is communication skills. I mean, it's what's been the cause of most of the issues so far, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, well, and it's been some fairly basic communication breakdowns too.
Tell me about how my father died. Okay, after this battle, maybe, and then I'll go talk to my wife about how we caused your father's death without checking to see if anyone was listening.
Yeah, there's a. But I think you still need these sort of lower level slimy thugs to kind of flesh out the universe. But yeah, I don't know. In general, do you have any feelings on these last 5 chapters? Were these, some of your favorites or some of your least favorites?
These are. I think the most pivotal moment here is when Guofu attacks Yang Guo. I mean, I think it marks the halfway point of the novel quite well. Slightly past halfway, given on
but
chapter
it's basically the mid.
It feels like the midpoint of the story there. Yeah.
And I mean, we can tell. We know he loses his arm. We know he's going to lose
Yeah,
his arm.
it's a known fact.
Yeah. But I think that it's a really ballsy thing to do that, like in the middle of the story like this. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not done like
cliffhanger as well. Yeah. Like, I'm not sure if it's because of this was originally published in a newspaper, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was. And I know. And again, I know my understanding is the newspaper version was slightly different, and then it was revised when it was released as a novel. Then it was revised again, I think in the 90s or the 80s, and then it was revised again in the early 2000s. So there's like 3 revisions. And I don't know.
So I just wonder if this cliffhanger would have been worse. Well, it definitely would have been worse if it was published serially, because I don't think one chapter now is the equivalent of what I imagine maybe you could break it down into 10 parts in the newspaper perfectly fine, I'd say. Like, imagine dragging it out over 10 times as long and just ending one publication on Yang Guo about to lose his arm, and then not going back to him for maybe another 10 or 20 issues of newspaper.
Well, and one thing I don't know how it was released. Like, I don't know when it was released, if it was each chapter was in the, do you know what I mean? Like, could they do, because these chapters are pretty long. And so
it's very long, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if they were releasing whole chapters or if it was more like sections of chapters.
I imagine it must have been broken down. It does, because just from the way it's translated, obviously, like, it feels a little bit like it's all very discrete sections, kind of. They all sort of like have a natural ending point.
Yeah.
And then some of the chapters sort of blur together. I mean, there was the fight scene with the blacksmith, which sort of carried over into the next chapter, which sort of says to me that, maybe at some point they would have been looking at continuous chapters on this rather than being separated.
I'm going to try to find the answer to that. I there's a book called Paper Swordsman. I can't remember the name of the author, but he's done a lot of is it Minford maybe? I don't know. No, Christopher Ham. But that book gets into all of the Louis Cha books, and that I remember them covering this. So I'm going to see if there was because I have this feeling that there might have been a difference. But it's a minor point either way. It's a minor point. But But what we'll do is we'll make a point of doing one on that. We'll do one on Lee Mochu as well, I think, at some point. Um, but yeah, it's a really, and it's not done like the Luke Skywalker way where he loses the hand, but then he gets like a prosthetic hand. You know what I mean? It's a real loss that he has to sort of deal with.
And it's not just the hand either; it's the arm,
Yeah.
right, up from the elbow.
Yeah, it's the whole arm.
Yeah.
I think it's his whole arm.
Is it actually the whole arm?
I think so.
Yeah,
I
from
could
the
be
shoulder
wrong.
up, from the shoulder. Yeah,
Um,
I think that's traditionally how we see him, and then and then he gets badass upgrades towards the end half of the story, which is pretty cool. But we'll leave that for when it happens.
I mean, if it doesn't, eventually he overcomes it, but there's still this. He's got to really deal with it. What's also interesting is it happens kind of when he's almost at the peak of his power. Like, at least, I mean, obviously he gets more powerful as the book goes on, but like at this point, he almost seems unstoppable. Do you know what I mean? And then Guafu just cuts his arm off, and he's beaten the Wu brothers with a branch. He's rescuing Guo Jing from the Mongol camp. He's doing all this stuff, and then like a domestic dispute, and he loses an arm. But yeah. So I don't know. Any other thoughts on these ones?
No. I think we've basically talked about everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we'll be back on next week with the next 5 chapters. So I think what was that, 26 through 30? Is that where we're at now?
Yep.
And hopefully, we'll be in better shape next week. We do apologize for if this was a little bit more lethargic than some of our other episodes, but I think also I do really want to do that Lee Mochu revisit. I think that wouldn't be a bad idea. So we'll be back on, and we will talk to you later.